Hey everybody, this is Munson Steed. Welcome to Boundless Brothers. Welcome to another Ride Con where we bring those individuals who clearly will help give us insight and allow us to what we call professionally evolve. So one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, one of the brothers who clearly I understand the value of what it is. I believe in redemption. I believe in love. I believe that we all meet ourselves at various times along the road. One of my favorite characters in the Bible is Paul. Amen. And one of the things that I say that we all need to have is a spiritual life. So for those of you who don't know, obviously he is an extraordinary human being. I remember moving and rolling out, was just pulling up in the D, and I got welcomed to the D by Kwame and my brother Andre Johnson, and who's my mother. Kwame's a rattler, y'all, so we'll forgive him for that moment. But HBC Power forever with us, great legends from Rob Hardy, obviously Will Packer, Jay Carter, Keisha Brown, all the people. Keith Klink Scale. I could go on forever. Real rattlers, but this is a Balanced Brothers, and as a brother, I can just put my hand up and say I've been way out of bounds, like way out of bounds. I found myself out of bounds. Kwame, you've moved through life now. What would you say to a brother, and what would you say to your younger self that you had no, what I call observer self in that moment? Because we be in the moment and can't see ourselves.
First, Munson, thank you for having me here. And I appreciate you for what you've been doing with rolling out and just individually with brothers and sisters in our community.
Hold on a second. I love your mom.
I know.
I just want to say, for anybody that has forgotten Congresswoman Kilpatrick, shame on you. I want you to understand that I loved her, and when rolling out and we would fly back from there, she would always give me the biggest hug. And I was just her son. I was just one more son. And we don't always give the flowers. But she treated me with such love and respect. And I just wanted to say, just pause. I just wanted to say to you that your mom gave me gifts that I couldn't give to myself. Wow. And I just want to say that out loud because, and if you would, just let her know that I send my love, brother. I'm sorry.
Yeah, see, this like that interview in Jerry Maguire where he say, I'm not going to cry, Munson. I'm not going to cry. You can't get to talking about nobody's mama. This is about some brothers, right? You can't do that to me right off the bat. So I
didn't want to forget, Kwame. I
do my thing. See, I got to do my thing. Don't be stopping me talking about my mama. Now, next you're going to talk about my grandmama and all that heavy crying and carrying on. See, I see how you work it. But let me just first say, I thank you to you. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for saying that about mom. I love my mom. She is the epitome of a mother. She was working every day, raised us in the hood, Linwood and the Boulevard in the city of Detroit. And so she made sure that I did my homework every day. She was at every parent-teacher conference, but we also was marching around stores that were serving bad meat. We was running campaigns. She was going back and forth from Lansing and then to Washington. She's the epitome of a strong African-American woman, mother, friend, auntie, grandmother. She's phenomenal. She's that lady in that poem that Maya Angelou wrote. And so I thank you for acknowledging her. I would say what I say to my young self, and brothers, hear me good on this. We all have been given this spirit of dominion from God. We want to own our spot. We want to be in a position of doing to death what we've been gifted by God to do. I don't care what that is, whether it looks good or not, whether it's legal or not, whatever it is, you have been gifted to just take over in that area. I was absolutely unafraid in politics. Whatever room they told me I couldn't get in, that was the very room I was figuring out a way to get up in that joint. But I say at the same time that you develop in your hustle, develop in your skill, your gift, you must spend as much time developing your character. I was told by Minister Farrakhan one time, and also Bishop Jakes, Two men, I think, are great in whatever perspective that you have.
Amen.
They both told me the same message in a different way. They won't take you down because of your gift. They'll take you down because of your lack of character and integrity. And that is the exact way. They couldn't beat me at politics. They couldn't beat me in campaigning. They couldn't beat me in policy. They couldn't beat me in the understanding of the appropriations processes and whatever is going on in Washington. I could get to the Oval Office. I don't care who was in there, whether it was Clinton or George Bush. I was on Air Force One, but I was also on Con Air, chained up like a wild animal, waist chains, ankle chains, and the black box because of my lack of character. It wasn't because of my prowess in politics. And so every young person, every middle-aged person that's listening now, if you had a pivot point in your life or a pivot point in your career, make sure you're spending as much time reading books, getting good counsel, going to wise men, doing the hard things, like taking the just a little longer way to get there instead of the shortcut that you absolutely know in your belly is not the right thing. So developing your character at the same tenacity and focus as you're developing your skill. That's what I would tell, in short, every person that's seeking to be great and seeking to do great in the spot and the presence and the place and the purpose that God has given them their gift.
You know, you think about we as Black men and our spiritual lives. When you developed your interpersonal relationship with God, where were you, and how now do you allow him to play a role in your life?
I was in a solitary confinement cell in a federal correctional institution. You know, and I always tell brothers, you know, spend some time with God, interface with your spiritual life, the real you, before you end up where I was. But I had the kind of personality where I had to be broken. And you know, the old folks used to call it sweetly broken, but it hurts. It's not good. And it's not everybody falls that's connected to you. And so it wasn't just Kwame Kilpatrick going to prison. My ex-wife went to prison. My mother went to prison. My dad, my three sons were 8 years. You know, I went in, my youngest son was 11. I came out, he was 19. My oldest sons were 17. I came out, they were 25. So you miss critical time with the people that you're supposed to be, you know, loving and nurturing and raising. And so on that floor where I was mad at God, I was blaming him for everything that happened to me, shouting out to him, talking real crazy and reckless to God, using words that you don't use with God. In the middle of my hollering out, I received this spirit of absolute thankfulness that he was taking care of my sons. Their pictures just came. Oh my God, Lord, I'm sorry. Take care. Thank you for protecting my sons. Thank you for protecting my mama. Don't let nobody die while I'm in here, please, Lord. And so I just went crazy on that floor. And in a puddle of tears, the next day, I found myself in the chapel. And this man named Bruce Smith, he was a volunteer from Yukon, Oklahoma. I'm talking about the most unlikely guy, white guy, about 6'3", big fella, Vietnam vet. He looked at me and said, Kwame, do you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ? And I said, man, no, I don't even know what that is. I've been in church my whole life, but I didn't really know what that was. And he sat down and he talked to me about the gospel of Jesus Christ with tears in my eyes. I got down on my knees and I accepted him to be Lord of my life. And I took myself off the throne of my life. And from that moment on, I didn't do religion. I did relationship. And so the spiritual part of my life became far more important than just even the physical part, because I couldn't go on dates. I couldn't woo no woman. I couldn't show off for nobody. I was in khakis and some boots every day. That was the best I could do with my life. And I got to a point where I said, you know, I got this 28-year sentence, Munson. I'm sitting there. If I'm going to be here, then I'm going to max out who I am in here. And that was the day that I made, those 2 days when I made the pivot from being old school Kwame Kilpatrick dude from Detroit to Kwame Kilpatrick man, father, husband, believer. And that's when that changed right there.
So you think about the change that is happening, and when you reach out to brothers today, what is the power of forgiveness? Like, how do
Man,
you forgive yourself?
you know, the greatest and most arduous or gut-wrenching process is the process to forgive yourself. You can forgive the people that sat on the stand against you. You know, the world tells you that you can't, but you really can, because ultimately, the prosecutor in my case said it best. He, in closing arguments after a 5.5 month trial, he stood up and said, "We don't have a smoking gun on Kwame Kilpatrick. We don't." The newspapers in Detroit on the front page the day before is "No smoking gun on Kilpatrick" as closing arguments began. And he said, "We don't have a smoking gun." But then he started pointing out all of my so-called friends, people that got on the stand. He talked about this person and that person. And one guy, he said, he's a scoundrel. He was horrible. He lied several times. He did stuff. And he said on the stand, he didn't even believe in God. But then the prosecutor said, he's not our friend. He's his friend, and pointed right at me. And he ended his message with "Birds of a feather flock together." So it was not as hard for me after I got over myself to forgive them. The hardest part was to forgive me when my 11-year-old and my 12-year-old son told me, "I miss everything." "You missing everything, Dad. You're not here for me." When my 17-year-old son told me I'm the worst man that he's ever known. And I had to deal with that. Now we tight now. But in those first years, those first 18 months of being in prison, I hated me more than I hated everybody else. And that was the place where God really pointed and showed me to me. It wasn't about swag. It wasn't about gators. It wasn't about suits. It wasn't about none of that no more, because it was about me. And I had to get to a point where I had to make a decision of whether I kill myself or whether I forgive myself. And those of us on this line, real brothers that'll be real honest with themselves, we've been to a place of brokenness because we don't really know how to handle that as men. It comes out as arrogance. It comes out as self-right. It comes out as anger. But sometimes we just mad at ourselves. We mad at our condition. We mad at how we became. We mad how we did our mamas. We mad how we did our woman. We just don't like how to be been fathers, and we feel like nothing. And it's in that place that you either make a choice. You either can forgive yourself or not. There's no middle, because you continue to limp through life if you don't forgive yourself. And by the grace of God, I decided that right there, I was going to believe him instead of me. And he said that therefore there is now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. He said, and he's forgiven me. And I just took him at his word. Now, that's just one thing to say, but you got to start walking in that forgiveness. So as news articles came and they started always talking about the old man, or magazine articles or media quotes, this is who he is. He's the corrupt, thugged out man, all this kind of stuff. I had to say, oh, I already forgave that guy. I forgave him. And you have to keep reminding yourself that you've already forgiven yourself. Then when other guys walk up into the picture, people that you know did you wrong, you have to remember, hey, you know what? I forgave them. So you're walking in that forgiveness, but you're also reminding yourself. Forgiveness is not something you can do by accident. You got to be very intentional. You got to be tenacious about it. And you got to focus upon it and say, I'm going to forgive me. And here it is, the last thing that was so hard for me, Munson. You know, this man told me to do this in prison. He said, go back, look in that little horrible, blurry mirror, and tell the guy in the mirror you love him. Boy, he said, I want you to tell him you love him. I want you to stand there for 60 seconds and tell him, I don't care what nobody says. I love you. God loves you. I love you, man. And the first time I did it, and I ain't never been no crying guy. I done cried more in the last 10 years than in the previous party, including when I was a baby. But tears rolled down my eyes because how hard it was to love the guy in the mirror. It was incredibly tough and difficult to love the guy in the mirror. And once I got to the point where I can love the guy in the mirror, I knew that I had forgiven myself. And so I dare everybody to try that when they get to where they're going.
What have you learned about surrounding yourself with individuals who seek your gifts?
Yes.
And what have you learned about yourself and how you communicate with them, given that your gifts are not gone?
Yeah. I lean on this word sometimes. The Bible says that the gifts and callings are without repentance. God don't take them back. He don't take them back if you strung out on dope. He don't take them back if you an alcoholic. He don't take them back if you've been a womanizer. He don't take them back if you've been to prison. He just don't take them back. You just a gifted dope thing. Yeah, you just a gifted alcoholic. As soon as you come up out of that, your gift's gonna show back up because he created you with gifts. So the first thing is you have to guard your gift, because most people are clamoring to you, not because of who you are, but because of what you have. And it's not always money. People believe that people are coming around them because of money. But what about you all out there that people keep clamoring? Family members keep always in your mix and always around. Your boys always want to hang at your house and be around you. It's not because of your money. You ain't got no money. It's about your gift. And so the first person that has to be a line of defense on his gift, whether that gift is writing, singing, reading, whether that gift is that you just a friend. Some people are just great friends. Some of us don't know how to be friends. Other people, they call, they check on you. And others just want to consume that. They want to eat up all your friendship. They want to eat up all that spirit in you, and they want to deform it or abuse it. And so it's up to us to guard our gift. And the one thing that you have to do is know where you got the gift from.
Amen.
If you know that it's God's business that he gave you that, then the part of guarding your gift is to make sure man doesn't take it. I don't care who the man is, your daddy, your brother, your son. They shouldn't have any more access to taking and snatching away your gift than anybody else. And so that's the first thing, guarding your gift. And then the second thing I think you have to do is you have to fully understand who you are. You are not a doormat. You are not a doormat. As a politician, I serve the people, and the people are allowed to become my God. Detroit and the people of Detroit, they were my gods. Listen, I didn't worship nothing else but Detroit. It's all about Detroit. It's about this city. This is what it is. At Munson, I was Detroit. And what happened is I was doing that so much that my children became second. My marriage became second or third. Nothing was more. God was just out of the pit. Nothing was more important than Detroit. But Detroit didn't give me nothing. God gave me a lot, and I presented it to Detroit, and they liked it and voted for it. I never realized it came from him until I'm sitting in a cell feeling like I had none of it. And he had to slowly give me the confidence to exercise the gift again. But now I know, and I'm guarding it with everything I have, because it's the key to my success, to my destiny. And by the grace of God, I know that jail and prison and solitary confinement for over 200 and something days, all of that was just preparation for where I'm going. But God had to show me I can give it, I can take it away, I can keep it, I can give it back to you. I'll take your gift to make room for you, the gift that I gave you. And you don't have to try and work. Just guard the gift that I gave you and move forward and make sure that people are not snatching parts of you that I gave you.
That's beautiful. So when young brothers who clearly are looking at themselves and they're trying to find their emotion, and understand that love and respect of self is important, what are the three things that they can do when they lean in and develop a spiritual life?
I think the one thing is they got to get away from people. Men in particular, or boys, we want to belong. It's not like some kind of coincidence that the numbers of people that are joining gangs, white, Mexican, black, boys are joining gangs. I don't care if it's Mexican mafia, if it's GDs. I don't care if it's vice lords or whether it's Aztecas. It doesn't matter whether it's dirty white boys or whatever, because people in general that are male, they want to belong to something. And we grow up with this boyhood belonging, basketball team, football team, hanging with the fellas. And to be able to mature spiritually, you got to break away from the team. This is the toughest thing for boys to do. The scripture says, and I keep going back and say, oh, this Bible, but listen to the wisdom of this. The Bible says, when I became a man, I put away childish things. That means there was a period of time where you were a man and you still had childish things. You have to actively, intentionally, and focusedly, as a man, put away boyhood. And the one thing in boyhood that you have to do, number one, in spiritual development, you got to put away your incessant need to belong to other people. It's hard for you to develop if you can't get away from where you've been and go somewhere else. There's a place called there, number two. Number two is get there. Get away from here and get there. There's this place called there. All of us have a there. Unfortunately, my there was in 4 different federal correctional institutions. I don't want your there to be that. I want you to voluntarily move from here and go there. And that's the second place. Where is your there? Is your there to somebody? And I promise you, everybody on here, I don't care if you're 15, 18, 25, 30, you've had a man or woman give you an opportunity to come and learn something else, and you passed it. You passed on that opportunity because you just didn't want to not do the stuff here. And that required you to get up, move away from all of that and go there, whether that was a job, whether that was a program, whether that was an opportunity to come to a new men's program, whether that was a church program. There has been somebody somewhere that has offered you an opportunity to move from here to there. I just talked to a young man the other day. He told me that the dude that was the director of the library in this town offered him the opportunity to come have a job at the library and told him he could study there as much as he wanted. He was like, I don't want to work in no library. I said, man, you missing it. It wasn't even about the work in the library. It was moving you out the hood in this community center every day, going over to the library, surrounded by all this information, all these new kind of people, all that law, the whole law practice is on one side of the library. You never know what the opportunity was. He said, oh, that's your there. And the reason I bring that up is because you've got to be able to recognize that here is no longer working for me and I got to get there. And the last thing, number 3, you got to be able to be tough enough and courageous enough to do more than just be in the hood. You're counting your toughness by being in the familiar. Now, if I'm from the middle of nowhere, it might look real tough for me to live on Linwood and the Boulevard. It might look crazy for me to live in the Swats or live on the south side of Chicago or in Philly or in Compton. But I'm from them places. So if I'm in there, it's not tough for me. The tougher thing is to go in the middle of nowhere. So I want you to understand that courage and confidence sometimes is squashed under this idea of toughness that we give ourselves. And because a lot of the rap, a lot of the other things, they're really celebrating the familiar. So here it is. You got to be tough and courageous and confident enough to engage the unfamiliar. We all know people, or hopefully you don't, but I do, that'll take out a gun, run in the house, shoot everybody, take the dope and run out. But if I ask them to go do a presentation in front of the board of GM, this same tough guy, I need you to come down there. They got $1 million that they want to give to people who want to move out of the streets into a different place. He'll be shaking. I ain't going down there to talk to them people. I don't know how to do that. What unfamiliar thing have you been nervous about, scared about, courageous about? What thing is you've been so discouraged because it's unfamiliar? You got to be able to engage the unfamiliar. Those are the three things I think it does to develop your spiritual life, because you're breaking strongholds of fear, you're breaking strongholds of stagnation, and you're breaking strongholds of being familiar and moving into the unknown. All of those that's all faith. See, everybody think we talk about spirit, we got to go to church. God is everywhere. He could deal with you on a solitary confinement floor in a prison, and he could deal with you in your house. He could deal with you in your bathroom, but he can deal with you really in your mind. If you just would allow yourself to move out of the prison of your mind, then you would be able to engage the spiritual fullness and the infinite intelligence of God.
You know, many of us explore that a little bit, build mental prisons. Can you describe the mental prison, obviously, that you built, but just as a brother, the ones that we need to tear down?
I talked about one, and I believe that there are a lot more people locked up in spiritual, mental, and emotional prisons than they'll ever be locked up in physical institutions. I believe that incarceration abounds. Bob Marley said, "Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds." How can I free my own mind? The first thing I had to do was break out of the cycle that the whole world and everything in it was Detroit, Michigan. I'd been to Florida A&M, and the entire time I'm at Florida A&M, I'm headed back to Detroit. But I learned something. I met people from all over the country. I mean, it was the greatest experience of my life, but I was Detroit focused, even in Tallahassee. The whole world is my block, my hood, my city, my community, Black people. This is when we get bogged down mentally in those places, we put ourselves in a mental prison. That means if a white guy is trying to move you from here to there, and as God sent him, you would never even recognize it, because, man, I ain't trusting them people. If your freedom was in Cleveland and you live in New York, you ain't going. I don't mess with no Cleveland. I don't even know nobody in Cleveland. So the first thing we have to do is release our minds to say, the earth is ours. I'm a citizen of the world. Right now, Munson, if he had to go to Nigeria to get something that God wanted to do with rolling out in his life and with his family, he'll be on the next plane, because he's free now to say it don't all have to be in Atlanta, Detroit, and New York. It could be somewhere else. I'm going wherever I need to go to fulfill whatever I need to fulfill for the purpose and destiny that God has for me. So how I did it is I had to break the cycle that I'm just a citizen of Detroit. I'm a citizen of the world. I'm a citizen of the world. And then secondly, these emotional prisons. We talked about a couple. The most outstanding two: fear, because men get scared. The reason I'm in the A, so the reason that there was a song that said, "I ain't never scared," is because there's some people that's always scared. I don't care how they look at on the outside. There's some people out there, you too scared now. You got to stop being scared and start covering it up with this macho bravado. You know, my grandfather used to say, if you're scared, say you're scared so we can deal with it. It's somebody that you got to be able to talk to about breaking and crushing the fear. You got to be able to get more than 3-4 blocks away from your house. You got to be able to go on the other side of town. You have to be able to engage people of different races and cultures and ethnicities. You must be able to engage information that you don't know about right now. Fear. And the other one is shame. These are the two things that paralyze us emotionally in prisons. We're ashamed. Kwame, you should be ashamed. You got busted in Detroit. They put you on trial. You go into prison. You should be, man, you shouldn't go nowhere else. Don't say nothing. Hide out. The devil's a lie. I'm alive. I'm alive. I don't even walk around in condemnation. For what? See, I messed up. I was crazy. I was cheating on my wife, crazy, had no business doing none of that. But I tell you this, I was so crazy and so messed up that I was the same way when I came to Christ and said, I'm going to be crazy on this side. I'm crazy enough to believe if I didn't die, then there's something more for me to do.
You know, when we think about the word ego, and it means easing God out for everybody, what have you learned about ego, and what has it meant, and when do you see it, and how do you talk to it so that it knows that it doesn't have any agency over you?
One thing that we have to do to kill the ego, or it's hard to kill it, but to subdue it enough where we understand we have to move in some sense of thankfulness, gratitude, grace, is that we have to know how we have the opportunities we have. It wasn't just from me. It wasn't just because of my prowess. I don't have this woman because I'm Billy D. Williams or Denzel Washington. I don't have the slickest tongue or the most money or the biggest house or the best job. I am where I am, alive, well, healthy, still with my family. My children have graduated from college, all the different things that have happened because God was merciful to me. So many of the brothers, you've been caught up in situations. The reason you didn't die that night at the club, the reason that you didn't get HIV when your boys got HIV when messing with that girl, the reason that you didn't die in the car that night is because of grace. When you understand that, it changes the way you look at life, but it also fills you with this courage. And let me tell you what I mean. It's not this soft, punkish, cream puffy Jesus type of Christianity that they've been selling you for all your life. You know, when I walk into a room now, I know I ain't even supposed to be in that room. I'm supposed to be in a cell for 17, 18 more years. So therefore, I ain't got nothing to lose. I'm here by grace. That means God sent me. So I ain't got no problem looking at somebody and ask, how you doing? I could be friendly, but I'm not going to come out of this room without asking you what I want to ask you. And a lot of men believe if you don't have ego, then you soft. And what I'm telling you, if you know you're on assignment and you know that he's already bigged you up by saving your life, by giving you the opportunities, who else made it off your block? Who else made it out of that situation you were in? Who else got up out of the hospital bed with what you had? In 2 years of dealing with this COVID, we all have lost so many people who have been close to us. But many of you had COVID, and a lot of y'all didn't even get a sniffle. Why? Oh, because I took my silver. I was, my elderberry and my black seed oil, If you understand that it was all grace, it subdues the ego and lifts up God on the throne. And now the ego, that part of you that you can't, is up in there. It's in there with confidence. Your confidence is not in you anymore. It's with the God that fashioned, formed, and made you. And that's the way you can subdue it, but to understand that it's not all about you.
You know, you shared the relationship with your son, with family. When we start talking about, I have a thing that everybody's going to at some point be welcome back home. And whether it's from prison, whether it's from being away from town, whether it's from mental illness, and we welcome people back. How do you reconcile with your children, for brothers who may be walking that same path, and understand that you're not going to get all your stuff and all your respect back when you walk out that door?
I think this is one of the most critical issues that we have, particularly in the Black community, and particularly with men in the Black community, because now we have 2 or 3 generations with this same problem. The first thing I told you, my son, Jaleel, my man, he told me that I was the worst man he'd ever known. I had a choice to make right at that point. The worst, man, you know, is Negroes out here doing this, is black folks doing it. I could have said all of that. But I had to accept it because he was hurting. And to him, a man, a dad is supposed to be in that house raising him every day. And you know, he was right. The fact that his dad wasn't there when he really needed his dad, and from his 17-year-old soul, that came out his mouth, because it came out his soul. The thing I had to do was love on him in that moment. Son, you're right. Because I'm the only man that you depended on. And so I got to be the worst because I let you down. I'm not there. Some of us have to learn to humble ourselves and see these things from our son's point of view. A lot of guys in prison say, I didn't get myself here. They mad at me because but your son was dependent on you to raise him. He goes to these little dances. He goes to the football field and the other dads are there. His dad is not. He goes over his friend's house and his friend's dad is playing basketball with him. His dad is not. And so regardless of whether you're in prison or you just live in another state, you have to understand that your child is hurting, and it's up to you to humble yourself, man, because you the man. You have the psychological maturity. You have the emotional maturity to handle this. When we cry out to God and say, I'm mad at you, God. I'm so mad. Why you got this doing that? You know he can handle it. He don't have to kill me because I talk to him like that. He likes the honesty because that's the place where he can work for me. You have to be the same. So the one thing we have to do is humble ourselves enough to be able to listen to our children. Take the onslaught. A lot of you are saying, I was tired of hearing that. My son, every time he complaining about me. Okay. He can't complain all the time if you're drawing in to him and getting closer to him and say, you're right, son. But you know, we're going to start from today. And when you bring up those things, I'm going to just tell you you're right. But I'm trying to get a new track record with you if you would let me. And you can't stop. They're testing you. They are testing you to see if you're going to walk away from them again. And if you get mad and say, all right, man, I tried, man, you ain't do it. And you walk away, he was right. Because he doesn't matter. She doesn't matter. The daughter, the son, they don't matter as much as your own feelings, really. It's just they hurting your feelings. But at some sense, they're right. And the last thing is this, don't dog their mother. Now, this is the hardest thing. I know, listen, this is a hard one right here. Because a lot of separation is caused by what they heard from their mother about you. But that's a classic opportunity for you to present something different. I always say that the best sermon is not the one preached, but the one lived. I can see a sermon in your life if you can show your children who you are, not just for buying them the new Jordans, not just for getting them some jeans, that wears off after that day, but actually showing them who you are with your voice, with your attitude, with your life, with your love. Then it starts to make a whole change in the mouth of this woman, and they start to see each person. By the time they get 12, 13, and 14, they start to even say, hey, man, she crazy. He all right. You got to allow the process to work and have the patience and emotional maturity to be able to handle that situation. Because the thing is to save your son, to save your daughter, from being on a pole or prostituting herself and her body, and to save your son from running out in them streets and getting himself killed or locked up. You have an obligation now, or just being stupid, or just being, a low energy. Suburban kids, a lot of times that's not the option, but you got a lot of suburban kids just laying around the house, smoking weed and popping pills and be in them same positions at 25 and 30 years old. And so it's our obligation to go get our kids, put our arms around them, and give them what some of us and many of us didn't have ourselves.
When you think about loving your kids and you're thinking about brothers spending, how do you define communication, regular communication? Like, is it if we think about it, we're often separated from our children. Um, do you write them letters? Did you write your children's letters? Did you pen any notes? I just, maybe you did. Maybe, and how important is therapeutic? I guess what I'm working on here is how therapeutic is it when you're writing your child a note and when you're letting them express themselves. Can you explain to brothers the therapy in that exchange of acceptance and the power of forgiveness that applies even when your child's son has not said something, or even when you got to write it down so he can review the conversation as many times as he wants because you wrote it down or taped it on the phone?
That is a crazy thing in Munson, because in prison, they talk about we're the last people to write letters, people that's housed in prison. And yeah, I wrote to my sons all the time. And I never received a letter back. And this is the place where people stopped writing. I didn't. I'm going to still write. What I found out later after I got out is like my youngest, he kept all the letters. I said, why you didn't write me back, man? It's like, I was a lot of times. But we have to understand it was therapeutic for me, for sure. I was telling them about who I am now. We talked about them on visits, but they never wrote me back. And I would tell them on the visit, man, why you don't write me back, man? When the prison got the text service on the thing, it was the first time I started hearing from them. And I learned something. Just because you want your son or daughter to communicate with you, they're not going to communicate with you the way you want to communicate. They're going to communicate the way they communicate. And we have to hold off or subdue the passion to get angry or mad. And I'm human. I'll be like, man, these dudes ain't even wrote me back, man. I'm just looking for a letter. And even when I make a phone call, man, write me back, man. I'm trying to hear about you. They're not going to do it. So you send emails or texts or cards and they ain't sending nothing back, but you shoot over a 3-line, you shoot over a long text. I would shoot over a long text and then send back, everything good, Dad. Thanks for hollering at me. You ain't answered no questions. I asked you about school. I asked you about basketball or football. You didn't say nothing, but it opened up a line, literally, of communication. Remember that term, a line of communication. And sometimes we're pouring out our hearts, but they just want to be able to, you just want to be touched by them because it's a building process. It didn't take a day or two to tear up the relationship. It didn't. And so we have to have the patience and maturity to rebuild it. But yeah, I wrote letters and it was therapeutic, but I could tell you them guys, my guys, and I got boys, but girls, I don't know if it's the same. I've never had a daughter if they wrote back, but them guys, they was playing basketball, football, making all kind of excuses. They were never sent. But as soon as I got that text thing, man, they were shooting texts at me every day. We started having a rapport, but I get 1 line, 2 lines. What up, Dad? Good to talk to you. Hey, football game today. I'm going hard. But see, to me, that was all I needed. It filled my soul with the fact that me and my sons are back in communication.
Well, I want to thank you for the time we spent, my dear brother. It's been great for Boundless Brothers and me as a brother to just catch up with you. Always love you. Once again, I'm going to remind you to just at least give her a hug. And you ain't got to say it's from Munson, but know that I need you to do that. I'm actually going to visit my mom for Thanksgiving. I hadn't seen her in 2 years.
Wow.
Just great seeing you, man. Great you back. You've always been a part of the Rolling Out family and always will be. And we're going to continue to heal this community and love on this community and grow as men, as Boundless Brothers. I'm Munson Steed, and I've been hanging out with my brother Kwame Kilpatrick. Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick, y'all, just so that you understand. It never goes away. You have to say honorable, even though they want to say unhonorable. Never shrink your giant that God has given you, no matter how much the world or anybody else wants to take it back. I'm Munson Steed with Kwame Kilpatrick here at Boundless Brothers. Peace.
Okay. Peace.